friends. I hope you are doing well. Today, I wanted to talk about having interesting conversations with awesome people because I had an interesting conversation with an awesome person last night. And I'm sure you guys were wondering, how does Allysia come up with all these video ideas that she does every single day? And the answer, well, there's actually two things. But one of those answers is that interesting conversations with awesome people ends up just seeding my mind with a whole bunch of different ideas of things that I'm bursting to share with you. And I feel like I have so many ideas of things to talk about that I feel like the cup overfloweth. I don't even know why I'm talking. Why am I being Shakespeare? Reset. And just as a side note, the other thing that I find gives me ideas of not only things to talk about with you, dear viewer, but also with my friends, reading books. Reading books is another way to get ideas. But one main benefit that having a real conversation with a real human being has over reading a book is that you arrive at ideas together. It's a much more active search for ideas. So if you sit down and read a book, there is an active component of reading. I mean, you can take notes, you can be engaged with the material. Oftentimes when I'm reading, I like to think about it as, how would I teach this to someone? And that makes me read in a much more engaged way than if I'm just sort of more passive, just letting the words wash through my mind. But when you're having a conversation with someone, unless you have a very weird circle of friends, you're not just sitting there being lectured. You're not being told ideas. You're not being given to them the way a book will give you an idea. So a book might be written someone who's been in a certain field for 20 years and they're like, this is the best that I have to give you. Here you go. And then they dole out these amazing bits of information, and that's really great and valuable. But with friends, really interesting friends who are awesome to chat with, you sort of co-collaborate. So your friend isn't just lecturing you on whatever great ideas they had or something like that. You have a conversation the way that friends do. I don't know, I'm explaining to you the process of a friendly conversation. But there's this back and forth, and I guess I am going to explain it to you in case there's an alien watching this who doesn't know how friendships and conversations work. But what ends up happening is the energy that I'm giving someone else, the ideas that I'm giving someone else, ends up allowing them to come up with their own ideas. So the process of having ideas is much more self-generated because you have these, I discovered something. It's almost like you create the idea as opposed to, seeing an idea somewhere that was inspiring. So that's why out of all the things that I do, it's my conversations with really, really cool people that just give me, I feel like I have 5 things, like I have a full week's worth, just one conversation. It's like a 2-hour conversation. I feel like I have a week's worth of topics to talk about with you guys, and maybe even more. The reason I wanted to share this today is because, of course, you had the burning question of, how do I come up with ideas for my videos, obviously, but also because I think that one thing that's been a really big surprise to me through this COVID experience, and we're going on nearly a year now, which is kind of wild to consider, is that the quality of my one-on-one interactions actually went up quite a bit. Because, and this is just maybe something that you've experienced in your own life as well, it's kind of like interesting kind of thing. So I've been having a lot more one-on-ones than I've had in previous years, because when the world was not riddled with a pandemic, what I would often do is I would hang out with several friends at once and we would do something. So maybe we would go to a concert or, hang out with our kids, and the kids end up sufficiently distracting us enough so that no one is able to get into the weeds of a deep conversation. It's not that I didn't have deep in-person conversations with my friends, but it's so much more likely that we're planning an event or we're doing something together, which is great also. However, not having things to do or places to go, and only being able to meet up with my friends via Zoom, and oftentimes one-on-one, basically just created a situation where it's like, okay, it's me in front of the camera, it's you in front of the camera, we have to talk, and just whatever we talk about often goes to interesting places, as opposed to being like, hey, it's me, hey, it's you, let's go grab lunch or go to a show or whatever it is. So that's been a really interesting thing about COVID, I find. I've had a lot of really inspiring one-on-one interactions with people, and I feel like as a result, I've had a lot of ideas, a lot of insights. I feel like my personal growth has gone up, even if my general contentedness has gone down, just because, it gets tiring to be caged up in home all the time, especially coming off this like extreme cold streak that we just had here in Saskatchewan. But anyway, that was my thought of the day. If you have interesting conversations with awesome people, it's a great way to just keep your mind alive, to keep thinking over new ideas. My grandpa said once, when I lived with my grandparents in my final year of high school. Whole other story. I had dropped out of high school, but I went back and finished, and I was living with my grandparents. And I would go out for coffee with my friends like every single night. And my grandparents would drive me. I didn't have my license. And my grandpa would say, "How was coffee?" And I'd say, "Good," because I was a surly teenager at that point. And he was like, "Oh yeah, saving the world with your friends over coffee." And then he started talking about, "Oh yeah, when me and my friends used to get together for coffee, we would always talk about like every world problem conceivable, and we would, solve them the way that young people often tend to do." And of course, not just young people. But why did I bring up that grandpa anecdote? Yes, I think I was just making the point that these higher frequency Zoom meetings with people, these forced one-on-ones, not in the real world, but in the virtual world, have sort of re-triggered this deep diving and introspecting aspect that might not have been tapped into. When you can distract yourself with doing things, you can distract yourself from going inward and looking inside and saying, okay, whoa, there's problems here. We got some work to do. And not even just inward. You can also look outward and say, wow, okay, there's also lots of problems in the world. This pandemic being one of those very problems. And I feel like just a lot of interesting growth has resulted from it. So I am curious if your guys' experience of the pandemic has been similar. If you found that, even though it's hard not to be close to people in physical proximity, I'm not saying that, but if your relationships have also taken on a different dimension, the types of conversations and hangouts you have with people, if they tend to have a little bit more depth and detail. But conversations like this that keep me spinning, keep the world turning. And on that note, have a great conversation with an awesome friend, and I'll catch up with you guys later.